Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Journey today, and we are so pleased to have Shelley Meyers with us today. And Shelley, every first-time guest gets a little gift from us. We are low budget, really low budget, but take it and accept it for our thankfulness of coming and joining us today. We're going to talk about, I think, a very important topic, especially here in Green Valley, and we were talking a little bit about this a little bit earlier, that when COVID hit, we really faced something that was really very profound for our people, and it was loneliness. And we are still seeing the effects of that. And so Shelley's here today, and I wanted Shelley to talk a little bit about herself, about her education, and what her counseling practice. I'd like for you to talk to our audience and explain that, if you would.
Okay, sure. So again, my name is Shelley Meyers. I moved here to Green Valley 4 years ago from Pennsylvania. Love it. My background is a master's degree in marriage and family therapy and half of a doctorate, which means not a doctorate, but the experience and education of a doctoral program as well. Most of my clinical experience, so I've had a lot in the last 15 plus years, kids, families, couples, individuals as well. I do see people here in Green Valley as on a private practice scale, and if that's something you'd like to find out about, I do have a website. It's holdinghopecc.com, and you can find out a lot more about me there.
And you have a phone number, by the way?
Yes, it is 520-719-0300.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
Yep.
So let's talk about it. Well, you should talk to us about it. You're the expert. Let's talk about loneliness for us, please, today.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier, okay, what exactly is loneliness? And we think we know. So if you look it up, distress or discomfort when someone perceives a gap between their desire for social connection and the actual experience of it. So there's the desire part, which we kind of have to keep in mind that everybody's desire is going to be different. And so we might look at someone and assume that they're lonely because they have a pretty small group of people that they're with. That's not necessarily the case. Definitely not the same as being alone or being by yourself.
Oh, okay.
So solitude is that choice of taking time to yourself and spending time with yourself, whereas loneliness is having that real desire for wanting connection and not having it. There's also an issue with the quality of your relationships versus the quantity. You know, having lots of friends is not the same as having good friends. I mean, you can have lots of good friends, but people sometimes mistake, oh, well, I have a lot, so that must mean it's better than someone who has a few, and that's not necessarily the case.
True.
I could talk a little bit about Green Valley and kind of the
Yes,
specifics
please.
here.
Yes.
Well, it's no secret that Green Valley has a large population of older folks. And what's really interesting to me is I looked up percentages. So even just Green Valley versus Tucson, right next to us, 65 and older, Green Valley, 80% of the population is 65 and older versus 16%
Oh, my.
in Tucson. So when you think about that and all the things that come along with getting older, losing your spouse or your significant other, generally through death or even health issues, you know, unfortunately people sometimes have cognitive health issues. And so you are in a sense like losing the person you used to know.
Sure.
You know, even health issues for yourself. Let's say you can't drive anymore. Well, maybe driving is the way you got to the different groups and events and activities that you socialized with. One of the things that's unique here, I've heard the phrase like nobody in Green Valley is actually from Green Valley. So that may or may not be the case, but you have a lot of people who've come here and retired here or, you know, moved here when they were a bit older. So their extended family is living somewhere else. So they don't have that, the kids are right near them or the grandkids are right near them. So that kind of plays a role also. And we were talking to COVID. In
Right.
many ways created or exacerbated issues. Certainly the health part of it, but people isolating themselves, and I think a lot of people becoming fearful, just not wanting to engage anymore because they've kind of been conditioned almost to think that being around people is scary and possibly dangerous. So I think that plays a really big role too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about, you were mentioning a little bit about COVID, and the other thing is that people move here. My wife and I have found out something that was really kind of interesting over the years, how many people have moved here away from family, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Oregon, like where we come from, and their children or grandchildren are back there, but in that time that they've moved here, there's been a disconnect. The family isn't keeping in touch with their mother or father or grandparents down here. So the loneliness sets in because they're not getting birthday cards, they're not getting Christmas cards, they're not getting phone calls. So they feel alone, they feel separated from family. In fact, it happens so often that they think Pat and I are their main family because we're the ones that come and visit them and spend time with them, in their home. And another thought I had about loneliness that we run into here is that when people lose a pet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have you had experience in that, or worked with somebody that had a loss of a pet?
Oh, yeah, and of course, as a pet lover, I
Yes,
can
me
certainly
too. I got Whisper,
understand.
right, folks?
And even, and this is an example from years ago, but I was seeing a married couple, and the husband contacted me. He said, "Would it be okay to see you by myself? My dog just died, and I'm just having a really hard time with
Oh,
it."
sure.
And I said, okay. So we talked, and he felt so guilty because he said, I had a family member that died recently, and I didn't take that as hard as I took the loss of my dog. And I asked him, how often did you see that family member? Oh, maybe once a month, maybe whatever during family events. What about your dog? Oh, well, my dog, lives with me. We spent, every day together, not necessarily all day, but I said, well, and then the light kind of came on. Like,
Yeah.
this is someone who is part of your life, and especially if you're alone.
Oh, yeah.
There was a period in my own life when, before I married my husband, I had a dog partly because I didn't want to be alone, and I kind of needed some other living being
Right.
around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that could be a big.
Well, talk to the audience a little bit about it, if you wouldn't mind. Like down here too, we also have a lot of memory issues, Alzheimer's, dementia, and that sense that a person, your loved one, can be living in the same house with you, but because of their dementia or Alzheimer's, there's a disconnect. There's no longer the communication, the response. Could you talk to the audience a little bit about if you've had any experience dealing with that?
A little bit with some people that I know here. Of course, yes, you have the issue of not having the same kind of connection that you used to have. And I praise the Lord, it hasn't happened to us or yes yet, but I admit I can't even imagine what it would be like for my husband to not know who I was,
No,
or to not remember me or things like that. So it's lonely and it's painful, The other thing is the spouse who's married to the person with those kinds of issues, that they're also in the role of a caretaker. So it's this added stress. It can also lead to a little bit of resentment or, because they're, especially if you're older, you don't have a lot of energy and,
Right.
to do all these things. And so you're just exhausting yourself. So it's really hard. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to, if you know people that are in those situations, to kind of come alongside with them and just be of help. You don't have to be some expert. You can just be a companion,
Sure.
um, and just to get resources.
Yeah.
So,
Appreciate what you're saying. Friday, we're going to have another conference at the church. Sylvia Collins and her team have put together a wonderful ministry they call Finishing Well. And this Friday, they're going to have a conference and have somebody come in to speak about hospice, because that's another dimension that happens in Green Valley often, is that a spouse is put on hospice. So that changes the dynamics also within the framework of that relationship and in that household.
right.
Have you had any dealings with that at all?
Not too much, kind of
Yeah.
on the periphery.
Yeah,
You know. So just speaking, just for myself, and even kind of alluding to a conversation we had earlier, it's such a good idea to start thinking and talking about those things before they ever even come on your radar.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you'll never have to be in that situation, but if you talk about it and figure some things out first, especially if you have a spouse or family, people need to know what each person wants,
Yeah.
so that if there is a chance that they can't speak for themselves, you will already know that.
Yeah.
Also takes a little bit of that pressure off too.
Right. I think I'm so appreciative that you said that, because I know when I've talked to Sylvia and her team that part of the reason they started Finishing Well was more of a preparation for, in the event it may happen, you will have the tools available to you to help you get through that season in your life, which is loneliness. I was just thinking about pets. I was just thinking about just not the loneliness part, but the grieving that comes along with the loss of a pet or a loved one. And I've read statistics, and I know some people would probably think I'm off the rocker here, but that some people have a closer relationship with their pet than they do with their spouse. There's a dynamic there that isn't, so I just,
And that's possible, and it's possible to a degree, or may feel that way, because let's face it, your pet isn't judgmental. You can tell your pet anything you want, and they're just going to look at you and accept that. But I think what makes it hard too when we grieve our pets is that we are fearful that people will think we're crazy.
yeah.
And so we kind of almost suffer in silence sometimes, because
Yeah.
people think I'm weird if I'm so distraught over.
You said an interesting comment, suffering in silence. Could you talk a little bit more about that, what you meant by that?
Well, it could be used for a few different things. And one of them, so we were talking specifically about pets, where we are just so reluctant to express how we feel about something because we fear judgment from people, so we keep it inside. One of the things I was thinking about too that I wanted to make sure to mention is that people can feel lonely even when they're married. So having a spouse doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you can't be lonely.
Right.
And so sometimes the quality of your marriage, and maybe it was great, and maybe over time people get complacent, or just kind of used to things, or slowly. I've heard many people talk about, we've become roommates.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And so in those cases, you also have people who suffer in silence because, well, there's nothing terrible. It's not like bad, it's just not good.
Not good.
Or I don't want to say anything, or maybe it's just me, or they're just so confused about it, or maybe reluctant to ask their spouse, like, are you kind of feeling the same way? So I do think a lot of people were suffering in silence that way too.
Yeah. When I was doing my doctoral studies, I remember reading, this is years ago now, But I remember reading a report on, and I'll never forget, it showed a picture, a big crowd of people, and this person's in the middle of the crowd, and they highlighted this person. And the idea was you can be in the midst of a large crowd and still feel lonely, still have that feeling of loneliness.
Absolutely.
Even in the midst of people can come to church and 400 people and sit in this pew here and feel like they're all alone. And we don't want you to ever feel that way, by the way, you know. But in closing up today, do you have some ideas about people who may be listening in today, and they're identifying, Shelley, with so much of what you've already said, some wonderful things this morning, some ideas they can do, steps they can take if they're at home and they're feeling lonely.
Okay. So a couple of things are more like things to ask yourself. So, for example, do I have what we would call negativity bias? So, for example, do I automatically assume that someone's going to reject me, or someone's going to say no, or someone's not going to like me? And then we isolate because of that. So that happens a lot, you know. So kind of think about that. And also, am I the person who's always waiting for somebody else to make the first move?
Oh,
You know, I know lots of people who say, like, well, I don't really have any friends and I don't have this. It's like, okay, well, we might talk about, have you thought about calling this person you know and know pretty well and asking them to go out for coffee or hang out for a movie? Well, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't want to. So do you think that maybe that person is sitting there going, maybe I should call so-and-so to go out for coffee or to a movie. Oh, but they might not want to.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we have to kind of suck it up a little bit and make the first step.
Yeah.
And give it a try. You know, most likely people will be receptive to that. So taking small risks like that, joining a group or a class of something that you're interested in is a great thing to do. Small groups, especially like if you're going to church or you're thinking about attending a church, finding a small group to be a part of or a support group. If for someone who's a Christian and might be worried about, you know, maybe they have a sin issue or they have some struggles that they don't really want to talk about and they feel like they'd be judged, so they maybe keep to themselves. Finding maybe an accountability person or a group like that to kind of connect with. Talking about marriage, and again, that making the first move type of thing. If you feel like you're disconnected and starting to get to that roommate phase and feeling lonely, you could talk to your spouse, see how they feel. I mean, possibly counseling is helpful, or thinking, what can I do first? Instead of going, well, I'll wait till, I'm not going to do something till they do something, you know, which doesn't work. Okay, what's a small step I can take to kind of make things a little bit better? And usually people will be receptive to that. The other thing is, think about, am I lonely or am I just uncomfortable with being with myself?
Oh.
And that's a big, and I noticed that even about my own self. I would try to fill my time with so much stuff because I just had a hard time kind of just being with myself and just thinking about things and my life and my goals and stuff. I just needed distractions. And so maybe part of it is actually finding ways to embrace the solitude part, being able to recognize, okay, maybe I just need to find ways to make this a positive experience, being by myself versus alone.
Yeah. I have a question about that. Do you think that that's one of the reasons why people, when they're sitting home, always got to have the TV on or the radio on? Does that absorb, or
I think
does that kind of take the place of, or?
I think there's a couple. I think one is that distraction thing, and let's face it, technology nowadays, there's so much stuff around us all the time that it's so easy to get used to that, you know. So there is that.
You know what I thought about? Cell phones. That's for some people. That's their whole life. This thing I got in my pocket. You ever see them? I know people that cannot go through life without that cell phone in their ear. I see a person. She walks out here up past the golf course when I go up that way. Every time I see her, she walks a long ways. That phone is never out of her ear, and I can tell she's talking all the time. So it takes the place of maybe or substitute.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'd be happy someone's actually talking on it.
Yeah.
People don't talk on them anymore. But to kind of reiterate that there are times when people get so used to that distraction and used to like the impatience.
Yes.
We always have to have something going on or something filling our time, and we've created a dependency.
Yes.
When
Very much.
again we have a computer in our pocket with everything on it, so if it's natural to kind of almost be dependent on this thing where that's probably a topic for another time, but
Yeah.
about making sure that you're not so reliant on one thing, whatever the thing is, that you don't really connect with the world around you.
Yeah. So wrap it up today. What final thoughts would you have with us today?
So one thing I would say is if this is something that you're struggling with and having a hard time with, talking to, if you don't feel like you have friends that are close enough to talk to, possibly calling a counselor or a therapist or a coach that you can talk to that's not biased. They don't know you already, so they can be a little bit more non-judgmental about what's going on. And sometimes it's a little bit of a skill issue, or it's maybe a self-esteem boost. So that could be a very helpful thing for somebody to kind of get that jump start.
Right.
And I would just encourage people, and I'm talking to myself as well, to take a little step to take a risk. To, if you really want to connect with other people, find some small way you can head in that direction. Making a phone call, inviting someone for something, going to a group, coming to church.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I was thinking about that because I'm always concerned about our people. And if you're here, if you attend our church anyway, and you come on Sunday morning and you feel like you're sitting alone in this, you got 300 people in here, let's say, but you feel like you're all alone. I don't know if this is a good answer or not, but find Pat or myself and we would be happy to talk to you. Or you're sitting at home and you would like to have somebody come and see you. We've got a team of, I think there's 63 or 64 on our visitation team, and we would love to send people out to your home. Just give Pat a call. She's on the phone 24 hours a day. Anyway, I'm just kidding, but she's on it a lot. And we would be happy to help meet that need in your life. Because we don't want anybody in our church family especially to feel like they're alone and that nobody cares, or I'm facing this problem all by myself. You don't have to face it by yourself. We're here for you. I want you to know that.
Absolutely. And I think people would be surprised to know how many other people are feeling the same way.
Yes, yeah. In fact, in closing, I thought about, and I wanted to read to you, because the thing is that God knows where you're at. His omniscience or omnipresence is an indicator that God is aware of our loneliness. And it's interesting that the Bible recognizes the pain of loneliness with verses like it's found in Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. And then there's Psalm 25, verse 16. Turn to me and be gracious to me. This is David talking now, and he's being hunted by Saul. Talk about a guy that felt all alone, hiding in a cave. Turn to me and be gracious to me. He says, for I am lonely and I'm afflicted. And we need to remember that God is a source of comfort for us. Then finally in Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. So you can turn to God for sure. And anyway, Shelley, thank you so much for joining us today. Been such a pleasure. We're going to have you back again down the road someplace. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Victor. And it'll be posted here probably within a couple of days. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to call and talk to Pat and I about the video lesson for today, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much. God bless you today.